Hi, welcome to my channel. This is the third part of the granny square with a popcorn interior. If you are interested to see how to make the popcorn, then please refer to the first part. The second part has been these two rows here, and I will be doing two colors like that. And so this video will be on the outer three layers. If you wanted to, you could work it in one color, which means that from the previous video you would have continued. You wouldn't have changed color. If you want to, you can change color again and make the last one a different color. I prefer not to if possible, simply because I don't have much space in which to work away my yarns. So if possible, I do try to have the last two rows of the same as in the same color, like this one here. So if I do 3 rows in there, I'll have those two last ones of the same color. It's just trial and error. I love the bright colors. So let's get started. I'll be using this one as a guide, but this is the one that we're working on. That was video 1. That's video 2. I've worked away the ends. And so this will be video 3. This is Stylecraft Special DK, and I'll be working in US terms. I'm using a 4mm hook, foam handle for pencil, slipped over a rather hard, inexpensive hook, but I do love the hook. I love the metal part, so I was very happy to add the foams. To start off with, I'm going to make a slip knot. If you've watched the previous video, you will know about this, but if you haven't, I take the longer part in the front, I wrap it over, and make a slip knot. It's the shorter tail that decides the opening and closing of the slip knot. And I do it on purpose so that if I want to come back after I've done the stitches and slightly close that loop, I can do so. I like to work close to a corner so that when I work my tail away, I have large sections to work into. I try and work on the opposite side of the previous color. So I'll go into here. So the slip knot on the needle, on the hook, will be going in. Let me just zoom in on it. There we go. Shaking. Go into the space created by the groups of the previous row. Fetch the yarn. Keep the hook horizontal with the work. Fetch the yarn, pull it through, chain 1. Now, as you can see, this first loop is a bit big, but I will leave it for now, and when I come back later, I can see if I want to pull it in a bit. I'm going to make 1 double crochet. When I come back later, I will slip the next double crochet in there. In the corner, there will be groups of 3 double crochet, a chain 1, and 3 double crochet. The edges are all 3 double crochets in groups, and there is no chain between the groups. Come to the corner, working under tension. Now you see the corner is right down on the side like that. And you might think, well, that looks really bizarre. Why is the corner down there? But as you work, it just writes itself. It becomes a perfect square. This hasn't been blocked. Once it's sewn together into a blanket, you can't really see it because I haven't zoomed out. Once you've worked it together in a blanket, then it's fine. So even though it's on the side there, I just follow the pattern. Now I work my corners under tension. I pull my yarn, I pull the hook. They're working against each other so that my stitches are not gaping. I want them nice and tight. Chain 1, another 3, the same space, and now it's the sides. Go back to normal tension. As the square gets bigger, it becomes a little bit tricky. I have to be careful not to catch the work from the previous row with my hook. So I will fold and tuck my square as is needed. Sometimes I'll fold it down like that. Sometimes I'll fold it forward just to make sure. Use my fingers as guides as well. Twist the hook in my fingers. I'll roll it. Here we go. Come into the corner. And so there's be 6 double crochets in here, separated by a chain. Nice and tight. Really tucking them in, because 6 of them have to fit in there. Another 5, another 4, 3. Make sure it fits in. Really getting that stitch tucked in. Another one tucked into there. That's the corner done. Now I'm going to cut these little tails off. Here we go. I'm going to cut these little tails off because they are annoying me. It's just as a guide to show you. Okay, tails are gone. Where were we? Now, this row is the row that will be repeated for all following rows. My square is 6 inches. I'm working all the rows in the same direction on the same side. I'm not turning the work over. If my granny square had been bigger, then I would have opted for turning it for every row. But that's a different technique from what I'm doing now. Tucking in that last stitch there, nice and tight. Careful I don't pull these out. Keeping my eye on that, not to catch those stitches. So I'm coming in for the home run here. If you watched the previous video, you will see how I stepped up, keeping the same color. So here we've come to the end of the row, and I will be tucking in that double crochet in there. In the previous video, I showed you how to step up. I slip stitched like that. I slip stitched like that. I went underneath, fetched the yarn, held the hook horizontal so I could see that this loop was nice and generous, pulled it through, and made 2 double crochets. And this is how you would work exactly the same row I've just done, and you would continue and you would continue. Now you might think, oh well, next time I'll be working in the corner. No, because you will always be away from the corner simply by the fact that you're now adding a corner here, so you'll never be working in the corner. You'll always be working on the side. But what I want to show you is how I can end a row in a different way. And this is how I would end the row if I was going to then be sewing my edges together. In some techniques, you'd place your squares together in different ways. You'd either crochet them for that side, you would crochet them from that side, or you put them together like this. You would weave them in, you would weave them from the back. It's all different techniques. I'm not very keen on sewing squares together. I leave that up to someone else. I just make the squares and then send them off. But I do know they need to have a clean edge, because otherwise they come to a section where there's a big knot. You're going to have to work around that knot if they are weaving in and out. So I like to make an invisible seam. If I'm working with one color, then I would have started, with one row, I would have started with 2 like that. The third one comes in, and it's very simple. It tucks in there and it's invisible. It's a little bit different if there were already 3 there, because then my last stitch would be here. I'd have to bridge the gap. But the concept is the same. I'll show you how I do it. Come in, you do your last double crochet. So there's 1, and 2 to start the row, 3, cut a generous piece, go through there, and what you will do now is you will pull it out. You'll take your darning needle. Actually, I do suggest that you go and watch part 2. I hope that you have, because it's quite in-depth explanation on how to sew up the threads. So you'd go through there, but I'm not going to use the pointy part. I'm going to use the back. Not a darning needle, sorry, it's a tapestry needle. I pick up the 2 V's. You see the 2 V's there? That is the top of the stitch here. Go into the 2 V's and I pull it out. Now what you can see is I am actually creating the top of the stitch. You go down, catch those 2. Now the stitch is not complete. It's missing. In the anatomy of a stitch, there is a bottom part. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. There you can see it nicely. There is a bottom part in the anatomy of a stitch. It's missing here. So to complete it, we're going to go across. Now the stitch is complete. You don't want to pull it too tight, because the person who's going to come along, either sewing from this side or from that side, they want that stitch to be beautifully even with all the other ones. Now, this is not the last row. If it was, I would work along here into the worm. I'd go up, I'd go down, I'd go up and I'd down, I'd just weave it and I'd come back again. So it absolutely won't come unraveled. Making sure that my tail is open each time, like this, opening the stitch, opening the fibers. And this one I'd also work away, making sure that knot, I work into that knot a few times. Go back to video number 2, the end, you'll see how to work away the tails. But because there is going to be another row, so it'll be there. I won't work it away now, I will leave it. Because you see this big worm here? That's a worm, I call them worms. That worm is going to be there. And it's going to be perfect to work into. So I'll leave my threads, and then later on I'll come and I'll work into that worm, and I'll go down to this worm, and I'll go up. There'll be a worm here as well. This green worm will be over there. So that is why I tend to save up my threads, work them away. This one I've got lots of space to work up. I can go all the way up, I can go all the way down, I can go all the way to the corner. I can work into that worm. And as I said, when I have 2 on the edges, work that knot nicely away, go round and round, really get into that knot. Work away. Let me show you. Let me go. I mean, if by this time you know everything, you can stop the video. But if you haven't watched video number 2, let me just show you. Using the back, the sharp tapestry needle, open up the stitch. There's 3 here. On this row there was 2. And that last one was tucked in there. And then I worked away across by using slip stitch, and then I made more here. This one there's 3. So I'll go into the top, pull it through. That then goes top of that. There's my V. Don't pull it tight. I want it to match all the other V's. Turn the work around. Catch this little section there. Go across. Catch the little section there. Pull it through. Put your finger in place just so that you can make sure it's not going to be pulled too tight. You can double check. Beautiful. It's invisible as anything. You can come back a little bit just to make sure that it's anchored. And then go down. Now, there are fibers from the previous row. I like to catch the fibers from the previous row. Give it a certain stability. Open up the yarn, twisting it. Go up, catching as many of the threads as possible as I go. And then I'm going to go into this worm. Come out there. My finger at the back has a job. Make sure it doesn't peek. It makes sure that the needle and therefore the thread doesn't peek through. Now as I go through this worm, I catch as many as I can. You can actually hear it. There's another worm down here, which I'd probably leave for this one here. So I'm going to go along. Came out. Unravel it a bit. Go up, up. Through that. Now there's the rule of coming back. So I'm going to go down and then I'm going to come back. Catch some of the yarn from the previous row. Very happy with that. Now this one here, here we go. There's the knot. This is gaping a little bit, so I'm going to go and fetch him. Just bring him in. Stabilize it a little bit. I like to go through the knot if possible. Keep my finger in place. Okay, it's closed it up. Open it up a bit like this. Go up, following the makeup of the stitches. Go down to that bottom worm because the top worm was used by the other thread. Is it in? Yes, it's in. Using the previous row, catch some of the threads from the previous row. And now go back into that worm. I can feel I'm catching as many threads as possible. And the rule of 3 directions, coming back. I've already worked around these ones, but I do want to carry the yarn as far as possible. So I'm going to go through. There's hardly any left, so this little piece. There we go. I'm very happy with that. This one hasn't been worked away, so I won't be cutting that off. Let me zoom out. So you won't be able to see where it has been done. By feeling, you should be able to tell. Not there, not there. It's one of these. Let me see. Ah, it's that one there. You literally can almost not see it. So that's how we add rows. As I said, this one, I won't work the tails away until I have done some more rows. So it'll just fit in snugly like that. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope that it's been enjoyable, even if it's been long. And that you will have a lovely granny square journey with the popcorn. I call it the reverse popcorn. And then, of course, the granny squares. Goodbye then. Thank you very much.